The War for Earth by Austin Deford. Introduction. 1,000 years ago, a rapidly progressing ice age forced humanity to abandon Earth. 10 massive ships carrying millions of people were launched into space to escape the devastation and have orbited the frozen planet ever since. Over the years, these ships have become nations unto themselves, developing separate militaries and engaging in wars with one another. As another conflict brews between the two ships' nations over a habitable place on Earth, you receive a faint radio signal from the Earth's surface. Chapter 1. The Faint Voice. At first, it was just a casual morning on the spaceship Allegiance 3, the fourth ship launched into space. I go to work at the command center, and I walked by the radio to go get some coffee, and the radio went off, and it said, in a faint voice, that said, "Hello?" I was stumped. I didn't know how that was. It didn't sound like anyone I've heard of, so I checked the radio frequency, and it said that it was not coming from any of the other ships. So I assumed that it was coming from Earth. So I called down the commander. I heard them say, "Hello?" again before my commander came. When he walked in, I saluted him and said, "Commander Al-Aside."
"Yes,"
said Al-Aside. "There's a radio frequency coming from Earth."
"What do you mean? Earth is uninhabitable. Plus, the frost would have killed all that didn't make it on the ship."
"Well, it's not coming from any other ships," I said.
"Fine. Answer them to see where they're from,"
the commander said. So I did, and they answered, "Who is this?" "We are Allegiance 3, I replied. "How are you living on Earth?" "What do you mean?" she replied. "There was an ice age that made us go to space because it was now inhabitable." "Ice age?" she said. "It's summer here." "Where exactly are you? Reply." "My mom says we were in Maine," she said. "Okay, I have to go. We will come down and help you." "What do we do?" I said. The commander was mad. He said,
"Sneak onto Allegiance 2 and break out the prisoners and bring them here."
I took a small transport ship and some guards, and we got through the first hallway, took a left there. They knocked the guards unconscious and took 34 prisoners, then boarded them up, took them to an empty storage room, and put them in different storage containers, and then prepared. We got food and water, some suits for if it's not habitable, weapons, cameras, and radios. We load the prisoners up and tell them what's going on. 12 of them were still loyal to Alliance 2, so we killed them. Now there are 22 prisoners, me, and 7 guards, and enough room for 7 more. We launched. "This is the first time I've been in a ship, or the atmosphere," I said. They all laughed and said,
"Well, get used to it."
I felt sick to my stomach because of the flight. We landed 3 hours later. Chapter 2. The Ground. Already in our gear, one prisoner volunteered to go out without gear and see if we needed it all on or not. He stepped outside, and he was fine, but we all kept it on except him to see if there were long-term effects. And after a while, his face broke out and was burning, so he put his suit on. And that means that the radiation levels are high. They found the girl. She was a beautiful young girl about the same age I was. I asked her what her name was. "Lexa," she replied. One of the jailmates said,
"Hey, good looking,"
and smiled at her. She said, "Shut it, or you'll be dead too." He stopped smiling, and everyone laughed at him. I asked, "Do you have a home?" "Yes," she replied. "Follow me." We did, and everyone started walking. She said not all of them. I said, "Guards, stay with them, keep them in order, and build a hut, and get a fire started." The guards nodded. I walked with her. She was a very smart person, and she built a radio from scratch to see if anyone was still on the ships. She and her family consisted of her mother, Amelia, her brother, Jackson, and her dog, Augusta. They had a small farm with crops, some pens with animals like sheep and pigs, a horse and a cow. The horse was named Lightning because he was very fast. She told him these things and stuff about her on the way there. They got there, and her mother was a loving mom and was protective of her family, so she had a lot of questions. She asked, "Why do you have a suit on?" I replied, "The air down here's radiation levels are a bit high and can cause burned skin and cancer. I don't understand how you survived. Is there anyone else down here?" "Yes," replied the mother. "There's at least quite a few of us." "What do you mean, us?" I said in a questionable voice. The mother pulled out a knife and pricked her finger and her daughter's finger. Their blood was a really dark blue color. "We don't know what it does for our immunity or how we got it," her mother said. "Is it fine if I take a sample to study your blood?" "No," she said in a stern voice. "Okay," I said. "I understand. Is there anything else?" "No," she responded. "Do the rest of people have black blood like you?" "There are 3 other ones. Tanya, Caroline, and Jacob." "Okay, where are they at?" "Tanya and Caroline are both dead. Jacob lives not too far away. He lives by himself, though. Tanya and Caroline were their parents." "Okay, well, I think I should be leaving," I said. I walked off, and she stopped me and said, "I never got your name." I turned around and said, "Oh, my name is Asher." She smiled and walked back inside. I walked back to camp, and there are 5 dead people on the ground, 1 guard, 4 prisoners. The guards are dragging them away into a huge hole, except the guard they took his suit and armor and weapons off and made a neat stack of his stuff and buried his body. The commander of Allegiance 2, Noah, had gone to our ship with 12 guards with weapons. They were there to talk to the commander, so they did. Noah said, "We have footage of you stealing our prisoners and knocking out guards unconscious."
"Yes, we did,"
said Aliside.
"Why?"
said Noah.
"'Cause of the Earth. It is habitable. The radiation levels are slightly elevated. You won't survive down there for more than 2 days without a suit," said Aliside.
"Fine. Then we have suits."
"Wait, no," Aliside interrupted. "The planet is ours. We found that it was habitable. It's ours," said Aliside very sternly.
"Well, we're taking it over," said Noah. A lot of guards came rushing into the room and stopped Noah and his guards, and Aliside said,
"You are not going anywhere,"
and told the guards to take their weapons and take them to the prison. Chapter 3. The War on Land. Back on Earth, we finished the hut. It was big, and then made a room for equipment from the guard and the prisoner that died. It was the night we all slept on the ground next to the fire. The fire was warm and tired, but I couldn't really feel it because my suit was starting to get uncomfortable, so I took it off for a second. I felt fine, so I left it off for a couple of minutes, and I was getting really tired, and I fell asleep. I was awoken in the morning by the guard's leader.
"Your face!"
he said in a panic. It broke out, and it stung. I quickly put the suit back on. I was really hot because of the fire. I couldn't sit around, so I went out to hunt because we were running low on food. I grabbed a knife, crossbow. I put it on my back with a strap and a rifle. I was walking through the woods with my rifle in my hand, my walkie-talkie in my pocket, and an earbud in my ear in case they called, so I wouldn't scare an animal away. I came across a deer. It turned away. I shot it, dead. Its face was deformed. There were 2 heads, but between the 2 heads, it was bound together, and it was all gory in between the faces. I didn't take it because I didn't want to scare the guards or prisoners, or if it had a disease. I started to walk away, and a guard called the walkie-talkie and said, "Where are you? I heard a gunshot." I replied with a laugh. "The gunshot was me. I shot a deer, but I'm not taking it home. It has a disease or something." He left the call. I continued walking, and I was stopped by Lexa. She said, "What was that noise?" She seen the gun and pulled out a sword. I put the gun down and said, "I just shot a deer for food, and it has a disease or something." She said, "No, it didn't. It's just deformed." Okay. Then I got the deer on the sled and pulled it. She walked me back to the camp. On the way back, we were attacked by these people in dark clothes. They were in the trees with bows and arrows. They peered out, and a few with swords stepped out from behind the trees. 2 horse riders came up with a bigger horse between the 2. The riders pulled off to the side about 10 feet away and pulled some bow and arrows out and pointed it towards us. The rider in between pulled out her nicely handcrafted sword and came up to us. I pulled my handgun out and pointed it at her. All the archers pulled their arrow back further, as if they were going to shoot me and Lexa, who was behind me. She walked around me and pulled her shield and her sword, which was also neatly handcrafted, and said, "What are you doing here?" The lady said, "This is our land. We had an agreement, so the real question is, what are you doing here?" I was going back to camp, and he insisted to take the shortcut. "And who is he?" she asked. "My name is Asher." "I'm Emily," she said in a mean voice. On my walkie-talkie, without them noticing, I hit an emergency button, So now at camp, they know where we are. The guards and the prisoners came with guns. They said to the archers and the others to drop your weapons. They didn't do it. My men all aimed and cocked the guns. The archers aimed their weapons at us. Emily yelled, "Fire!" And we returned fire. The guys in the trees fell out. The people behind them charged, holding their swords high in the air. Some of the prisoners, not knowing what they were doing, were killed. Some of the people had shields. The horse riders were shot along with the horses. A few guards dropped. I went to fire at Emily. She ran behind a fallen horse. 2 archers followed. Few swordsmen came over. I shot one. Then prisoners ran over, picked up some shields and swords, charged at the rest of them, and got stabbed while fighting with swords. They were good. I aimed at an archer that had released an arrow. It was going for Lexa. I ran over and pushed her out of the way, and I was shot. I fell down. A guard came over, and Lexa got her shield and got behind it and made it so I wouldn't get shot. And for a cover, they continued to shoot at the shield, though Lexa grabbed her sword and her shield and had stabbed a guy and pulled the blade out. I watched the guy slide off the blade. She turned around and cut a guy's head off with one quick motion of her blade. His head rolled. The rest of them ran. We had won the battle, for now, I said to myself. We had 3 guards and 12 prisoners and 3 wounded, others and me. They picked up the wounded and carried them to Lexa's house. Once we got there, Lexa and the guards went back to camp for the medical stuff and came back. Her mother worked on me first. She wrapped a piece of cloth around the arrow, pulled it out, held down the cloth really hard. It hurt a lot. Then Lexa grabbed her sword and put it in the fire. When it came out, it was glowing an orange color. She pressed it down really hard. I yelled, "Shit!" It hurt bad. Then put the cloth back on and the bleeding was really low. She moved on to the next. Lexa stayed and held the cloth down and said that I was fine. The brother came out and watched. He was younger, so he came over and had to be told what to do. He helped. He held down the cloth for the next guy, then a prisoner was the last person, and another prisoner helped him. They were friends in the jail on the ship. They had a big barn, and they'd take us all out there. The second guy didn't make it. He had died. It was another guard. We now only had 2 guards and 11 prisoners. We were short on men. We had stayed at Lex's house. I had to put on a new suit because of the arrow hole, and we were fed by her mother. She was a really good cook. One day we were setting up another camp. We surrounded it with electric wire, and we put up a turret in the middle of the camp, and we found a bunker, and that's where we stayed. We found some more food and guns. The food was expired, so we threw it out to lure in animals. We cleared off the stuff we didn't need and burned it with a fire. We sealed the cracks except for the ones in the door so we could get out. We put tracks on the side of the door and made a door you could slide so the radiation could not get in. We then went outside and we spotted a bunny. We went fishing. We caught 3 fish in a fast time. I guess is what happens when the fish population can grow and not all be hunted. We ate all of it in 2 days. We called up to our ship to see what was happening. No one answered. We continued to call. No one answered. We began to get worried, so we decided to call the commander personally. He had told us not to, but we did. He said, "What do you guys want?" in a tired voice. We could hear gunshots and people yelling. He said, "We are fighting again." "Why?" I asked. "Well, we took the commander hostage, and they weren't happy about it," said Commander Al-Assad. "Why?" I yelled. He said that they were going to take the Earth. Chapter 4. The Sky War. We need to find a way to get Allegiance 2 to surrender. We have their commander and some guards, and we can't let them stop fighting with us. We could kill him if we wanted to. We need to capture more of their guards. He was interrupted by the radio. "We will not surrender." Then they look out the window, and a spaceship was about to crash right into the side of the ship. The commander and the guards run out of the room, and they seal the doors. There was a loud boom, and the ship shook. Everyone fell over. The lights flicker on, off, and then stay on. "We need to get the starfighters ready to attack. We're going to win this war." As Al-Assad stresses about the war, a guard comes in and says, "The starfighters are ready." "Then launch them," said Al-Assad in an angry voice. "Yes, sir." He leaves the room. He watches all the fighting from outside of window and picks up our radio and says, "Asher? Asher, do you copy?" "Yes, I'm here. What do you need?"
Can we come to the ground yet? Is it safe to do it?
He said in a loud, mad voice. Yes, you can. The ground is safe, but you may need a suit because the radiation levels are slightly elevated. But we do have a base, but there isn't enough room for everyone.
How much room is there?
Enough for about 45 people. There's 12 of us, so that leaves 33 more who can stay here.
Can it be expanded?
Said Aliside. I mean, we would need some more equipment to expand the bunker, but we could just send down some workers and supplies in a ship.
Okay, said Aliside. We will send it down.
Later that day, we went out to get some wood and food. We started a fire and roasted the food. After we got done, we went outside and stayed watch. It was only after 3 hours that they had finally made it down. There were 4 guards and plenty of equipment. They had brought the equipment to the fortress and started to build. It took 3 days for the fortress to be finished. In those 3 days, we got a food supply and we got a farm started. Surprisingly, the crops grow fine in the slight radiation. We talked to Aliside, and he told us,
We've been winning, and soon we will send down more supplies and people so that we can start a city for us.
After he told me about the city, I was finishing up talking to him, and I heard a whole bunch of gunshots. I grabbed my rifle and walked outside. There were people on horses and people in the trees. We were being attacked again. I started to fire my rifle. They had way more people this time. There were people falling down. We were taking heavy fire. They were shooting arrows all around. They had good accuracy. We were knocking them off their horses before they could get to us, but they finally did. They were knocking us over from their horse. We were losing. We retreated into our base, and they were banging on the door. We had our rifles aimed at the door. We finally settled down after about 2 hours. We stayed the night. We all got our rifles out and started to walk out. They got all the bodies and put them on the trees. They were just hanging there. It was disgusting. In blood, it said, "This isn't over." We were horrified. We looked around. They left. We cleaned up, and we gave the men a proper burial. I found the radio was broken when I heard the gunshots. That was the only radio we had to talk to Aliside. Luckily, one of the prisoners was good at fixing things. It took him a few days, but he finally got it fixed. I radioed up to our commander, and there was no sense at first, but then after a few minutes, I got an answer. He said,
What happened?
I answer, I dropped the radio. We were attacked. Most of us were killed. We have people still in contact, though. We're also running out of food. We need more. Also, more people.
We are sending a few more people down. We can't spare much more people up here. We aren't doing too well either. We need some troops. We're sending big weapons, a few people, and supply food, and more stuff for the bunker.
We will also send a rover. Thank you, I say. As we stop talking, I leave back to where everyone is at. I go to Lex's house before the spacecraft comes with the supplies. I get there, and their house is burnt down. It looks like they made it out. I run all around in the woods yelling, Lexa! She is nowhere to be seen. I start to freak out. I look around and keep yelling. I spot her. I run over. She has most of her stuff that has value or she needs. I ask her what happens. She answers in an angry voice, You decided to come down and go to their land. I feel sorry, but at the same time, I'm mad. It's not my fault, I yell. Then she says, You're the one who pissed them off. I don't know what to say. She scoffs and walks away. I'm sorry, I yell. She keeps walking. Didn't even turn around. I walk back to camp just in time. The spacecraft is now landing. We unload and pull the rover into the bunker. We make more room in the bunker. It can now hold about 70 people. We set up the food in another room we made. We also have made a thing that cleans the water, so we can just get water from there. I radio up to the commander Aliside and asked him how it was going with the war, and he said,
We're doing okay. We have the upper hand and we are winning.
I hear a loud boom. Radio silence. I radioed to the command center. I asked, What happened? Jack, that was in the command center, said, There was a bombing that hit the ship. I dropped the radio. I realized what happened. I could look up and see the ship, our ship. There were parts falling. I told people what happened, and then I radioed them, and they said that they were sending all the civilians down and as much supplies as they can spare. There were thousands of civilians there. At first, they sent down all the supplies, and then a whole bunch of workers that could help build it. They waited about 2 days before sending down civilians. It was non-stop work when we were down there. When people started showing up, they were waiting in the base, and some helped us. So when we finished, almost half the people were there, and it was filling up about a day later. Everyone was here. 3 ships had been destroyed before entering the atmosphere. That's almost 60 people. Each ship had about 20 people. There wasn't any room left once everyone was down. We had packed most people in. We had to get so much more food, but they had sent down a lot, enough for everyone for about 2 weeks. We had to have non-stop hunters. We couldn't send out a whole bunch of people out everywhere because of the people, so we had hunting groups. We set up 2. With good hunters, we also had a limit for how far you could go out and how long you could go out, so that we were sure to get a lot of food over the next few weeks, and we could feed the people for months. We ended up having several fights, but no one was killed, thankfully. They had almost destroyed the ship. What would they do if all of us went down? Everyone else would come down. So we decided we were going to take all the ships that we were in an alliance in, and we were going to take them down to Earth, and we were going to leave all of the military and guards on one ship, and all the civilians were going to come down and bring lots of supplies and make sure no one came down from the other ships. We were in an alliance in 4 out of the 9 other ships. Now we just had to get the ships to agree. We immediately called them. We got all of them to agree. We got all the supplies down first and workers. We sent most of the people back up, so we had more space. We then built it very, very big. We also made the food pantry way bigger. We also then had one of the ships partially destroyed. We used our ship because we were being bombed, so we didn't need it anyway. We sent all the troops to one of the ships. We also had most of the ships sent down, so we can use that for supplies, and we made it even bigger. We then had cleared all the rest of the ships out after everyone went down to make sure no one was left behind. And we had little room left, but fit everyone. We had a room for government and started making separate rooms. We had eventually finished. We had plenty of food, and it had already been 6 months. We were on the ground and in the sky. We were fine, because we had all of our men there. No wars yet, though. Out of nowhere, a ship comes out of nowhere. It looks like Allegiance won. It had flown away a long time ago, and their radio had no connector. The ship had been blown out of the sky. Another one. Then another one. Soon, everyone was dead on the ships. There was a lot of smaller ships that came out. We gathered everything outside and got everything and brought it in so they didn't see us. We then sealed the underground bunker. We called everyone in. We were on lockdown.